Conversation with Ron MacLean.
Welcome to In Conversation. Today on the show, Cassie Campbell-Pascall and Paul Maurice. And there are a lot of connections, but one of the coolest, they were both captains early on in their careers. Cassie's got a movie that she's part of coming out on May the 24th, 7 o'clock Eastern on Sportsnet. Scotiabank on November 17th had Canadians from coast to coast to coast tell us about the heart of hockey. And that film is now coming out, and Cassie's a big part of that. And I remember one of her great roles as a leader was captain of the national women's team when they captured gold medals at the Olympics in Salt Lake City, 2002, and in Torino in 2006. But back to 2002 for a moment. Canada and the USA, arch rivals, played 8 exhibition games just before going to Utah. Canada lost all 8. The 8th and final defeat happened in Vancouver, and as the team was huddling around their goalie to commiserate, Cassie Campbell-Pascall as captain said to the women, "Look, we know we could have won tonight. When we go through the handshake line, you look the Americans in the eye, fiercely in the eye, and you let them know they should know that too." It was a fantastic moment. Paul Maurice was a captain with the OHL's Windsor Spitfires. And if you can believe it, there are 5 former captains of the Windsor Spitfires currently coaching in the National Hockey League. DJ Smith, Claude Julien, Joel Quenneville, Peter DeBoer, who's a dear friend of Paul Maurice's, and Paul, of course. Leadership and Windsor. What is it about that community? Well, I know that Rogers Hometown Hockey was in Windsor in 2016. It was shortly after the untimely death of Rob Morneau, who was a hockey coach, great baseball coach. Rob was an electrician, 44 years old, slipped, fell through a skylight, and died. His wife, Tricia, was battling cancer at the time and would succumb to her cancer shortly thereafter. And they have 2 boys. Noah was 12 at the time, Christian, who's 11. And the families around there, the community, all sheltered the boys, kept them in sports, which they loved. So Noah was 12 at the time. This April, he was drafted into the Ontario Hockey League by, you guessed it, the Windsor Spitfires. Today's show is about community, about the captain's class, and about the heart of hockey.
It's all the things that we value in our daily lives we can find in our game.
The commander-in-chief and Paul Maurice is a real handle on his group.
It's physical, it's emotional, but it takes character.
They like to play fast. They get on the forecheck. They are aggressive.
The game is so embedded in our fabric, our culture, that when you come here, you become a hockey fan.
She captained Team Canada to Olympic gold in 2002, and she did it again in 2006. Number 77, Cassie Campbell.
Growing up, she's always been my childhood hero, and to be able to, go to her hockey school and to be able to, learn from her and going home, after that and telling my parents, hey, this is something that I want to do.
My name is Lacey Clement, and my hero is Cassie Campbell.
My name is Doris Estebrant. My hero is Cassie Campbell.
My hero is Cassie Campbell.
And my hero is Cassie Campbell.
And my hero is Cassie Campbell.
Really excited to have Cassie and Paul on the show. Paul, what is the situation? Where are you sitting right at the moment?
And you know it. So I'm in the basement of my house, leaning up against the kind of electronic stack, because we moved yesterday and we don't have all the routers going, so our internet's pretty poor. And it's also so I'm in my furnace room, Ron, is the short answer, yeah.
I thought Mitch, after 8 weeks living together, that would be the story, because I know Kerry's about at that point.
Right.
How's Brad? Go ahead,
Paul. That's an improvement, because I was living in the garage earlier, so I've moved into the furnace room.
And how's Brad putting up with you, Cassie?
Well, I think that's probably the most difficult part for him right now. He's down in the basement on another call, and then I've got my daughter at the kitchen table out of my office. She's doing homeschooling, so hopefully the internet doesn't crash at this house right now.
I should say Brad Pascall, of course, is assistant GM of the Calgary Flames, and your daughter, Brooke, grade 4. So this is your book, Cassie. Funny enough, Bob Nicholson was on earlier last week, and I showed Lorna Schultz-Nicholson's book, which features your heart. The first 2 photos in your book, I'll just kind of put up here. Carolyn Ouellette's on one of the bicycles. And then the next picture in the book is there, Charlottetown, prior to Torino, 2005. So you are born to cycling. Tell us what you're up to.
It's funny. I've had a Peloton bike for about 2.5 years. I got it for Christmas a couple years ago. And myself and Ben Hebert, who's an Olympic gold medal curler, he has one too. And we thought, well, let's just work out together and push each other. And then we started to invite friends. And then I thought, you know what, this is a great way for me to connect with the national women's team. And I'm back there very part-time starting last year. And so I've had pretty much all the members on. I think I got about 5 or 6 of the young kids left to go. We just had a goalie one yesterday. And it gives them something to look forward to, and me too. And we're calling it now Join the Movement. We're just trying to get people to exercise and have fun. And if you have a Peloton bike, then you can actually join the classes we're doing. We've had Roberto Luongo, Becky Scott, Sean Monahan's come on, Michael Stone, and of course all the national women's teams. So we're going to keep this going and until we can all get back to some normalcy and just have some fun with it.
Paul, obviously the exercise you're getting is moving. It's funny, I'll talk to Cassie here a little bit about a film that's coming out, Hockey 24, that she's a part of, but you should be happy to be watching Sportsnet right now. They're replaying the 2016 World Cup. And of course, Winnipegger, Ralph Kruger, and you led Team Europe right to the final. Amazing. What do you recall about that World Cup experience?
All the things that you could learn if you kept your eyes open. So one of the things that I wouldn't have had in my career is a lot of professional development, right? So, I mean, really influenced by Jim Rutherford and the late now Tom Webster, who coached in the NHL. And after that, you're kind of scratch and claw and finding your way. So you get to this, I really enjoyed it. There's a 2014 World Cup. I worked with Dave Tippett and Pete DeBoer. That was good. But this one now is a month long. And Ralph's got a completely different way of doing things. So Brad Shaw and I had just a fantastic event. Watching him work, it was different. But we could talk hockey for hours. So Ralph and I, Ralph was a part-time scout for us in Carolina when he was over working with the Swiss national team. And we met at draft day. And you know the coaches don't sit at the business end of the table, right? We sit at the other end of the table. And Ralph and I talked for 12 hours about hockey. And it kind of happened year after year. And that was our original connection. We had drafted his son. But other than that, Ralph and I would just talk hockey. So that was the connection between the two. And that's, I mean, he had a different style and it really impacted me. The simplicity of the game. Some of it was tournament related. I would tell you that the thing that I took away the most was how good he was in that format. So we're sitting on the dock. He has a place at Lake of the Woods. He invited me down 2 hours east of Winnipeg. And we, again, had another 10-hour day on the dock. And we went through the schedule and the logistics of it. And he told me what was going to happen every day and about the emotions of your team. They're going to be excited here. If we lose here, this is going to be a tough one. This is going to be where they're going to make the decision whether they want to keep playing or not. And it was an awesome thing to watch, like 2 months in advance, it come together. So there were just so many great lessons. Watching Ralph, he's a great leader. You know him. He's got a fantastic personality, really interesting man. But I got to step back from being a head coach for whatever that would have been 21 years-ish and slip into an assistant coach's role and watch a guy that did things way different than I did. And I stole everything I could from him.
He's really into soccer and the quadrants of a field and how they relate to the quadrants on the ice, right? We'll get back to that, Ralph. But, you know, for the viewer, Paul got into the NHL at 28, and he was at 1,000 games at 43. And as I was telling the viewer in the preamble, a quarter century now into your career is just really, really something. Cassie, for you in your leadership role, kind of like coaching, what you did, I was saying also that Canada loses 8 straight times to the Americans in the lead up to the Salt Lake City Olympics. And you held a dinner gathering to try and convince the women that the great performance, even though it was a loss in Vancouver, was something to hold on to, and that some other leaders came and spoke. So maybe tell the viewer a little bit about, because you actually kind of did a version of a 2002 Zoom meeting.
Yeah, you know, you kind of reminded me about this, and I'd kind of forgotten about it. But I thought our team at that point, we'd lost 8 in a row, and we're heading to the Olympics. And Katrina Lemay-Doan was just named our flag bearer for Canada. And you know, I just thought we needed to hear different voices. We needed a pick-me-up night. We needed just, you know, to have that belief kind of back into us. And so I put Wick and Vicky in charge of dinner. So they had to go out and they got a nice Italian dinner and they catered it all in and they took control of that. And I had Katrina Lemay-Doan just come speak. And she was so busy with all the flag bearer responsibilities, but yet she took the time. And, you know, she said, you've played this game 1,000 times before. And that's the same way you got to approach it heading into the Olympics. And we had France St. Louis, and I can't remember if it was a video conference call or how it happened back then, but it was similar to what we're doing right now in the Zoom call. And she just had some words of encouragement, and she was one of the greatest captains in our game. And then we also had Eric Connor, who was a Paralympian and a sprinter. And, you know, he came in and he gave this amazing speech in person. And he wasn't really someone at that time that was really well known, but I knew him living here in Calgary, and I knew his work ethic, and I knew what he could bring to the table. And I just thought at that time we needed to hear outside voices, not our coach, not me, not Vicky, not Wick, just the captain group, the leadership group. We just put on a night for the girls to say, hey, we believe in you. And I think that sometimes, you know, those words, we believe in you, can go a long way in someone's life. And not to say that's the reason why we won, but I know a lot of the players came up to me afterwards and said, you know what, this was one of the greatest nights of the year. And so, that's all that matters, is just getting people's spirit in the right direction and getting them feeling good so they can play their best.
Well, Paul, 2002 was a great year for you too. I'm going to come back to this with you, I hope. But because Cassie mentioned that captaincy and leadership, you were a fantastic Spitfire captain. And I told the viewer, 5 former Spit captains are coaching in the National Hockey League. I mean, Jimmy Rutherford, you already mentioned, but explain to me why you had that maturity, why you were a leader for the OHL team. Because Adam Graves, he says, we knew this guy was targeted to be a coach when he was 18 and captain.
I think it's a big piece of that, Ron, is you're just a real product of the people around you, and you watch and you learn. So you would start with your parents for sure, and my 2 brothers, right? Really fine people, and learn from them. But specifically to the Windsor hockey environment, it produced 2 NHL head coaches right at the same time, Pete DeBoer and myself. Both of them had been captains of the team, but Jim Rutherford's the general manager. Tom Webster's the head coach, and Mr. Kermanis is the owner. So this was, and I want to be respectful to the other coaches that I had growing up, but Tommy Webster walked down that room and he was a pro coach. And I can't say it. Tommy recently passed away. So I've had a lot of conversations about him with people, kind of remembering him in the media and friends. But that's what the guys in the room would tell you. He walked in the room and he commanded the room. And when he was talking, we were listening, not out of fear, out of interest, right? Jim Rutherford, the same way. He's got a different style, but you have a conversation with Jim Rutherford, you walk away, usually with a smile on your face, not sure about one of the things he said to you, because he gave you a little shot in there, but you felt cared for. So these 2 guys, different personalities, and Mr. Kermanis as well, running this huge corporation, but loving major junior hockey and loving the kids and the people around him. If you watch them, you found the template for a program. And for me, the template how to coach. So Tommy's a very passionate, very emotional guy, but he'd have us all over for dinner all the time, right? And his wife, Carol, who unfortunately recently passed as well. You ask any guy on the team, and so now we're talking about 35 years ago, they're going to talk about the double baked potatoes that Carol Webster made you. Those are the things that they passed on to us, right? They cared about us. We were a family there. But there was also a real level of excellence. So I noticed that. I worked with Pete DeBoer at the World Cup, and I've been on a couple of Zoom calls with him and listened to him speak. And, you can obviously hear your own voice when you speak. We're a lot like Tom Webster and a lot like Jim Rutherford. That was a great little kind of breeding ground for what a program should be run, and we got to learn that at 17. So we got a head start on people. We did. We were just really lucky that we got drafted by great people and we had a chance to learn from them.
I don't have to tell you, Scotty Bowman has always said the greatest thing for a coach to have is a great owner. So it sounds like, you're just
right on.
But he knew that kind of support, and you have it in Winnipeg, obviously, with the Chipman family. One thing about Webster, and then he loved to do the shootout after practice, right? Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And how did he do?
Well, the first thing I remember is he was mad at somebody for not passing the puck hard, which would be one of the things that I am into. And he ripped the puck across the ice and broke the kid's stick with the pass. And then he just never, ever missed, right? I don't know how much time he spent. Tommy had huge forearms and he could rip a bar down from the red line. And he wasn't giving our goalies a chance. Like, he wasn't making them feel good. He would intentionally show everybody how he could shoot that puck.
So, Cassie, you worked on your shot in 2004 when you were banged up. You had kind of a concussion / pretty severe neck injury that almost ended your career. So why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah, I was, I got injured late in the season, and I basically took the summer off to retrain in a different way. And I had a serious neck injury. I bruised the spinal cord in my neck. And of course, women's hockey, we don't play a lot of money. So you hear spinal cord and you're starting to think, well, should I retire? What should I do? And so I took sort of some time away, and I decided to do just things a little differently. And, nowadays they're shooting pucks and they're doing all these things and they're in the skills things all the time. But that was relatively new at that point for us. And so I hired a shooting coach, and I would just be on synthetic ice with just my skates and my gloves and my stick, and, really taking it easy, obviously, and just rehabbing and trying to change the way my body looks so that I could come back and play and take anything on the physical side of the game. And it was just a great experience to kind of get away from the team too. And I wasn't really training with them at that time, and do my own thing. And as you get older, you really got to make sure you're taking care of yourself. And so it was just a really fun thing. And it took my shot to another level. And by no means was I ever a big goal scorer. I always passed on breakaways, but it definitely improved my game. And it was just one of those things that I kind of needed to do for myself and make sure that I was healthy enough to come back for eventually what would be my last Olympics.
You know, Lindros was a big proponent of hard passing buys you the time and space. That was one of his little secrets. And Paul, you did our Think Hockey tips. Brian Kilray, same thing. He could kill you with his one-timer or his wrister. So 2002 and the Carolina run. It's a big time for you. You know, that's a very special, magical year for Cassie, but I had to imagine it was a very magical year for you as well.
It reminded me in some ways of this year, because it was not smooth at the start. So we're here. The story that I'll tell you about 2002 is actually in November, and we're struggling, and I'm in trouble, right? We lose back-to-back home games, Buffalo and Washington on a Saturday and a Sunday. And our next game is in Florida on Thursday. So we got 3 days. And the only thing the coaches are saying is all we got to do is get on that plane. That's our biggest challenge right now. We got to be able to get on that plane and not get fired between now and that game, and then we have a chance. So it's that old line. So you're saying I got a chance. But in the middle of that, Jimmy trades for Sean Hill, trades for Sean Hill back, which wouldn't be a big household name. But he walked in that room, made a few jokes, and everything clicked after that. So we're down 2-0. In Florida, and I'm pretty sure, I'm packing at that point. It's over, and Jeff O'Neill scores kind of an off-body shot against Roberto Luongo, and it wasn't a great goal, and that just lit our bench up. We win 3-2, we go 7-2-1, and I get to keep my job, and we end up winning the Eastern Conference. So the rest of it, the story is far more exciting, but that's the reminder to me. Yeah. Over the course of the last century, how many times I've been in that spot where you just got to stay in the fight, man. And that would be what I have said 1,000 times this season. With all the things that we had going on, you walk in, boys, just stay in the fight. All you got to do is stay in the fight, and you will build a character that'll give you a chance to win the Stanley Cup.
Well, you kept saying, if we could just get to the trade deadline, we're so banged up. We could just get there. Yes. And then if we just get to March, where the schedule finally turns our way, and you got there.
And it did.
And you win 4 in a row, and then bang. Right. So I guess I'll ask you first. What are you thinking, Paul? Where do you think we're at in terms of a return?
Well, I think we're playing some form. So when I want to say, Ron, I got no inside information. I'm like everybody else. And the reason is because there really isn't a lot of information to be had, right? There's not a lot of information to make decisions on. So I'm sure there are plans being made, but the conversation I have had with people, and that's right kind of from players straight through ownership, we want to play this season in whatever form makes the most sense. And this is what you're starting to hear from everybody. Makes the most sense for the fans. Like at any time that I've been in the league, in terms of a feeling of responsibility that this game could do something, could deliver something, we got to get out there and get playing. Like, we want to play, but people like you and I were talking, I haven't turned on my TV in 3 weeks. Right? Like, you put a hockey game on there, every TV in Canada is going to be on, and that would be a great thing for us.
Well, May 24th, 7:00 Eastern on Sportsnet, Hockey 24, Cassie. So that's going to be a dose of, for me, almost like when I watched it, it was Rogers Hometown Hockey, and the inclusivity, the scope of our love affair with hockey. What was your take on Hockey 24?
Well, I think the real stories of the game, we're lucky, all three of us were, in the NHL covering it or coaching, and we get to kind of live that life that everyone watches on TV, if you will. And sometimes we forget about what hockey really is about, especially for our kids. And it should be about having fun. And if you become a good player, great, you're lucky and you get to move on and play at the elite level. But that's what the Hockey 24 with Scotiabank, what they've done. And it's the first time it's ever been done where a documentary has literally been put together by Canadians, so all of Canada can see it. So it's not like it's been produced behind the scenes where we're storytelling, and we at Sportsnet we have so many great producers who do these wonderful features. It's really parents of small kids zipping up their hockey bags and actually producing this. So it's a really unique venture, and I think everyone's going to be pretty excited to be watching hockey again on Sunday. I think we've all missed it, and this is a good opportunity to watch hockey again.
One thing I noticed with your Scotiabank Girls Hockey Fest that you do in Calgary, tell me, when you were young, did you go to the Eddie Shack Hockey School?
I did. I did go to the Eddie Shack Hockey School, and it was myself and my friend Steph Slade. We were the only two girls, you know, and we showed up and there's like 700 kids and we just had a blast. And you guys know Eddie, and you know, we kind of got to know him as kids, and actually he's married to my mom's cousin. So we kind of have a family connection, but he's wild and crazy. And, but that hockey school, I'll never forget it. We got to play all kinds of sports, and no one really cared that we were the only two girls. You know, we had to change in a different dressing room, but we were there and we were accepted, and it was really fun.
Well, not to put pressure on the other children, Sydney and Luke, but Jake obviously has won my heart, Paul, for obvious reasons. Tell the viewer what Jake's up to.
So the story goes like this. I'm sitting in Craig Heisinger's office, who you know is the assistant GM of the Winnipeg Jets, and he's wired into everything. So the Manitoba Blues hockey team, so it's in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, they're short a play-by-play guy. And the guy, Zinger, says, hey, just call some kid from Red River College. You know, we'll get a guy that's a college in town that does a little bit of broadcasting. And I said, well, my kid goes to Red River College, and turns out he wants to be a broadcaster. So he is the voice of the Manitoba Blues in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, and he absolutely loves it. To the point now, I think if we were going to sit down and have a discussion about the personnel on other NHL teams, he could tell you more than I could. Like he just loves it, right? So we listened to his games. I'll tell you a story. So there were two guys that were doing it. My son and another guy, and he was great. The first time I hear my son, I turn on the radio and go, oh man, that other guy's really, really good. Jake's never going to get a chance to do any of these games. And my wife kind of slaps me and says, that's your son. How can you not know that's your son? But I'm just remembering stories. I'll give you a better story. I walk in the house and I tell my wife, hey, Jake is doing the game tonight, and I am jacked, right? Jake's doing the Blues game tonight. And she looks at me with daggers and she goes, what are you talking about? And I said, no, this is great. He's going to play guy got sick. He gets to do a game. He's going to be so happy. He goes, how could you do that to him? Now, I'm absolutely shocked by this, right? Like, I go, what are you talking about? He's wanted to do this for a long time. And we're about on the verge of getting into a fight. And I'm walking away going, I can't believe she was so disappointed that. And I realized we were playing the St. Louis Blues that night. She thought that I hooked him on to doing the Blues game in the NHL for his first game. So we had a good howl about that. But yes, he's the voice of the Blues. He loves it. It's what he wants to do for a living. God bless him. I think he loves the game more than I do. And that goes to Cassie's story, right? There's way better stories around the game than necessarily the guys on the bench or behind it. There's some great stories. I think my kid's one of them.
You tell Jake, obviously, because he has spent a lot of his time in the United States. He knows Al Michaels, Doc Emmerich. He really is supposed to be like Doc, and that's a great call. My heroes, Don Whitman and DJ Raccoon Carney of Winnipeg. You tell him, Raccoon Carney, if he ever gets to meet that guy, give him a big hug. So Cassie Brooks, grade 4. I have a theory. Aristotle thought you hit your stride at 49. I don't know why you picked the age of 49, but it's coming, Cassie. Vicky Spinahara has passed it.
Thanks for reminding me.
But Brooke, what's I always think the magic age is 11. I really think you kind of know what you're going to do at 11. What's Brooks going to be?
You know, the great thing, Ron, especially as a young girl now, she can be whatever she wants to be. And, you know, she's playing hockey and playing sports, and she's in Girl Guides. But it's funny you say that. Like, I've really noticed a change in her over this last year. You know, she's a little bit more aggressive. Like, we play trampoline basketball, and I don't have to kind of give it to her anymore because she's already given it to me. And, you know, I noticed a change that she's starting to sort of figure out, what do I like and what do I want to do? And that's the great thing now, I think, with young girls. And she doesn't think I'm cool at all. She just, you know, if someone comes up and says hi, she's like, Mom, do you know them? I'm like, no, but, you know, and then we have to talk about strangers and all that stuff. But she has no idea really what I've done. And I think that's great. And that's exactly what I want. I want her to be able to choose her own path. And, you know, I wanted to introduce her to hockey because I think it's a great game. And she, you know, started a little bit later than most of her friends, but she's really loving the team aspect of it and the social. And she's an only child. So I think that's really important for her. But you're right, Ron. Like, I've really noticed sort of, you know, she's 9.5, and I've really kind of noticed over this last 6 months, 8 months or so, that she's starting to figure out what she likes and what she wants. And she's starting to ask to play different things and try different things. And so it's been a lot of fun to be her parent, that's for sure.
It's a good time to pay attention to an 11-year-old child. Watch what they're interested in then, because I think you're getting a precursor. Paul, you were recently part of a conversation about what it's like on the bench, coaching. That cauldron of pressure that you've got to get the right players on the ice. But I have a two-part question. What that's like. And second of all, when you stepped up to the microphone after the St. Louis Blues last spring score with 15 seconds left to pull out from down 2-0 to win a game that they had no business winning until the tail end, and you presented, I can't imagine what that's like. I talked to Nick Nurse about it. Because he lost Game 5 and they ended up winning, but you didn't. What's that like?
Well, that one first. There isn't really anything that can prepare you for that. I don't think your emotions are raw, right? And thank God you get 10 minutes. But I think you do start to look at it while it's part of your job. Let me go back. I'm driving down the road. I'm coaching the Toronto Maple Leafs, and it's early on in my tenure, and I'm on the Gardner, and I am beside myself because I've done about 50 interviews that day, and I can't keep anything straight. Like I don't even know if I think I got bored at one point and started changing my answers just out of and keep myself interested. And I had kind of an epiphany, but that's it. I'm never ever worried about what I say again. I'm going to tell people what I think. I'm going to be as honest as I can. I'm getting off the stage. So I'm devastated at that one because you do start to worry. Like that was about as good as we could play. I know we lost in the first round. We took a lot of heat. We played really well up until Game 6, but Game 5 we were right on. So that one hurts. All I'm thinking about that is I don't want to show anybody any fear or any weakness, because at some point that's getting back to your players, right? So you want to come in with as much strength as you can and positivity and being confident. Hey, we play like that, and that's the standard line, because as we play that way, we're going to be fine. But boy, getting to play like that again is a lot harder. That's the hard part, is getting to play like that again. That's a challenge. The bench part for me, the worst part of my day is about 2:30 in the afternoon. You're too far away from the game. You're not sure if you've done enough to win. And then the best part for me is just like 10 minutes before the game, going through the national anthems. I love that. Like that's one of the highlights for me of my job. Mm-hmm. And I take pictures in my head of my life, if that makes any sense. And I have a bunch of them, me standing on the bench during the national anthem. My first big one was in Montreal, in the Forum in Montreal. It was the 4th game I ever coached. And looking at the Montreal players standing across the blue line and thinking, like, that looks like my living room when I was 5. The cameras were so low there. Anyway, so being behind the bench, as much as going on all the pressure, it's also the most fun, the best place for me. Like we talk about, if you can get to a game with 8 minutes left and tied, that's the most tension, the most juice, the best you're going to feel. Throw that in the playoffs and it's even better. So it's the best part of my job.
It gives me chills. When I refereed and looked at that, I'd be at center ice looking at the Canada flag, but also the sweat, the perspiration from the pregame skate coming off the backs of the necks of the junior hockey players who were primed for this battle to ensue. What a feeling. So Cassie, you got to know that feeling both as a player and now as a presenter. So give me your take on that.
Well, it's funny. You mentioned the morning skates there, and I know that there's less and less of them happening, especially on a game day in the NHL as we, try to think about rest and recovery. But I love going to the morning skates because I love it when a guy just works on one little thing and then you kind of see it translate into the game that night. And it could be this minor little detail where he missed a shot in a certain spot in the game before, or, he just kind of taps it off the outside of his skate and puts it to his stick and shoots. And there's something that has happened that has made those guys work on these things usually. And sometimes it's about repetition and all those types of things, but usually it gives you a sense of, okay, I'm going to watch for this during the game. I'm going to watch for a similar play. And so I really enjoy going to the skates. And I think too, because of the sound, and, there's usually less guys on the ice there now, and you can hear the sound and the crackle of the ice. And it kind of brings me back to when I played and how much you appreciate those moments. And sometimes as you're in them, you don't appreciate them. But then when you look back now, you think, gosh, it was so fun to be on morning skates. It was so fun to show up at the rink. And so, I love the morning skates and what they bring. And I know they're a little different now, but I still go as much as I can and just love talking to people and talking hockey. And I'm impressed, Ron, with how many of the guys ask me about the women's game, about so-and-so and what's going on here. And, this generation grew up watching hockey, thinking it was just completely normal, women's hockey. So that part's fun for me too.
Any new news on the women's game front?
We're still working behind the scenes, and as you know, there's a new team in Toronto with the NWHL, and hey, I wish them all the best of luck, but it's not really what I think should be a future pro league, so it's not the right model, and I just keep fighting behind the scenes, as you know, and I think this COVID thing, you know, as much as it's more serious than hockey when it comes to that, it's definitely set us back a little bit. It's set the entire NHL back a little bit, so we've kind of been pushed on the back burner, but I know we're going to survive, Ron, and I know we're going to have a WNHL one day, and I think it's as imminent as can possibly be. As you mentioned, that morning skate at All-Star in St. Louis, right, Cassie? Watching the women prepare for the Elite 3-on-3 is as good as it gets. Paul, could listen to you for the rest of the time, but you've got to get back to moving.
I can talk today. I can talk for hours. I'll sit right here with you. No problem. I hope we see you on the ice this summer, and always just take such joy in listening to you. So best to the Jets, best to you, Mitch and the kids, and to Brad and Brooke, Cassie, thank you for this. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, guys.
Thanks as always to Captains Paul and Cassie. We're back Friday, 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 Pacific. Megan Agosta and Tyler Stewart of Bare Naked Ladies. Don't forget, Sunday, 7 o'clock ET, 4 Pacific, Hockey 24, filmed by Canada. We'll close as we always do with a song lyric, and it's about the heart of hockey. A good heart these days is hard to find, so please be gentle with this heart of mine. Fearville Sharkey. Thanks for watching. So long for now.